Before thermostats, electric blankets, and forced air heating, bedrooms were treated as controlled microenvironments. People did not try to heat the entire house at night. They focused on the sleeping space itself, using fabric, layering, and placement with intent. What survives in old photos, diaries, and house manuals is not decoration but strategy. These setups reduced fuel use, preserved body heat, and extended the life of bedding and clothing. The same principles still work today, especially for anyone concerned with energy costs, resilience, or cold weather preparedness. Heavy bed curtains were treated as thermal barriers, not decoration. Bed curtains were standard well into the early 20th century, even in modest homes. These were not light drapes. They were made from wool serge, thick cotton twill, repurposed blankets, or lined linen. The curtain system enclosed the bed on 3 or 4 sides, often hanging from a ceiling frame or wall-mounted rail. At night, the curtains were drawn fully closed, creating a smaller air volume around the sleeper. The heat produced by the body stayed within that pocket instead of rising into the room. In practical terms, this meant a bedroom could remain barely heated, or not heated at all, without discomfort. Coal, wood, or oil consumption dropped sharply when only the sleeping area was protected. To apply this today, a simple ceiling-mounted track with wool blankets or lined blackout curtains recreates the same effect. The key is overlap at the edges and enough length to reach the mattress surface, not the floor. Gaps defeat the system. Curtain lining was essential and often more important than the outer fabric. Pre-1950 curtain makers focused less on appearance and more on performance. Most bedroom curtains were lined, sometimes double-lined. A common setup paired a decorative outer layer with a dense cotton flannel or wool inner lining. This trapped air between layers, slowing heat transfer. Even thin outer fabrics became effective insulators when properly lined. In colder regions, winter curtains were swapped seasonally. Homes stored heavier curtain sets for the cold months and lighter ones for summer. This allowed windows to be treated as controllable thermal weak points instead of permanent losses. A modern equivalent is adding removable thermal liners or sewing a second layer onto existing curtains. The historical rule was simple. The lining should be as dense as possible without becoming stiff. Window curtains were sized to cover walls, not just glass. Old bedroom curtains were wider and longer than modern versions. They extended well beyond the window frame and often touched the floor. This was deliberate. Cold air pooled around windows and dropped downward. By covering the surrounding wall area, curtains intercepted drafts before they reached the bed. Curtain rods were mounted several inches above the window frame to prevent heat from escaping upward. Side returns, where the curtain wrapped back toward the wall, were common in colder climates. Applying this today means using rods wider than the window and curtains with enough width to remain gathered even when closed. Tight, stretched curtains lose insulating value. Bedrooms before 1950 frequently included fabric on exterior walls. Tapestries, rugs, quilted hangings, or even layered blankets were hung behind beds. This reduced heat loss through cold masonry or poorly insulated framing. These textiles also prevented condensation and dampness, extending the life of bedding and furniture. This approach is still effective in older homes and cabins. Hanging thick fabric behind the headboard or along the coldest wall creates a buffer zone. Historically, these hangings were removed in warmer months, preventing moisture buildup and pests. Pre-1950 bedspreads were heavy, tightly woven, and often quilted. Their job was to stop convective heat loss. Loose knits and lightweight throws were rare in winter bedrooms. The spread sealed the layers beneath it, preventing warm air from escaping upward when the sleeper shifted. So, a practical modern application is just using a tightly woven cotton or wool top layer over your blankets instead of fleece or open weave materials. The weight matters less than the density, honestly. Historical manuals frequently noted that a lighter blanket with a proper coverlet outperformed heavier bedding left exposed. Many older beds included valances or hanging fabric panels that reached all the way down to the floor. These helped block cold air from flowing under the bed and rising up around the sleeper. In unheated rooms, this could really mean the difference between comfort and constant chill. Recreating this nowadays can be as simple as adding a fabric bed skirt made from dense material, or even just tucking a blanket around the bed frame. The goal here is to stop air circulation beneath the mattress, especially in homes with raised floors or crawl spaces. In shared rooms or, larger bedrooms, folks used fabric partitions at night. A curtain drawn across part of a room would create a smaller heated zone, which sure made things cozier. This was pretty common in farmhouses and working-class homes. The rest of the room, well, it was just left to get cold, which helped save on fuel. So, this idea actually fits real well with preparedness scenarios today. If you hang a ceiling-mounted curtain to divide a bedroom or sleeping area, you can cut down on how much space you need to heat and, honestly, stay a lot warmer, without having to make any big changes to the building itself. The old-timers' thinking was, contain the heat first, then worry about insulation. Now, when it came to picking fabric, it was all about what worked and what was handy, not what looked good. Wool was highly valued since it keeps in the warmth even when it's damp, which is pretty handy. Linen got used because it's tough and lets air through, especially if you layer it right. Cotton flannel was a favorite for linings and inner layers. Silk, well, that was mostly seen in wealthier homes, and even then, it was usually just an outer layer over something heavier. So, when you're looking at modern equivalents, it's best to prioritize wool blends, dense cotton, and, layered construction. Synthetic fabrics can work too, but you really ought to choose them for their density, not just how soft they feel. Back in the day, folks would reuse worn clothing and blankets as linings, stretching out the life of their materials and cutting down on waste. Curtains and bed fabrics were, aired out on a regular basis, brushed to get rid of dust, and always stored dry during the off-seasons. That kept mold and bugs from ruining them and helped preserve their insulation value. These fabric systems were seen as part of the household infrastructure, not just for decoration. Applying this today means treating bedroom textiles as functional equipment. You want to clean them, rotate them seasonally, and repair small tears before they compromise performance. These methods reduced reliance on centralized heat and fragile energy systems. They allowed families to sleep comfortably during fuel shortages, economic downturns, and infrastructure failures. For modern viewers, they offer low-tech resilience. No electricity, no specialized tools, and no permanent alterations are required. You can implement a full pre-1950 bedroom fabric system in stages. Start with window coverage, then bed enclosure, then wall hangings. Each layer compounds the effect. Even partial adoption yields noticeable reductions in heating demand. These setups are not nostalgia. They are tested solutions refined over generations who just could not afford waste. They remain relevant wherever energy costs rise or reliability declines. If this kind of historically grounded practical knowledge matters to you, subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles and share this guide with others who value real skills over modern shortcuts. The more people preserve this knowledge, the less dependent we become on systems that fail when we need them most.